Welcome to Your Yes-Filled Life. I'm your host, Brenda Winkle, educator, healer, speaker, guide, and fierce advocate for your yes. I help sensitive and successful men and women find, reclaim, and live from their full embodied yes. Through empowering you to understand your energetic hygiene, establish healthy boundaries, and heal your nervous system, you'll be able to create your yes-filled life and move through your days with more freedom, more ease, and more joy. You'll hear inspiring stories of people who found their full-bodied yes, thought leaders who pursued their own dreams and are living life on their terms, and learn new ways to find the courage, joy, ease, and freedom to more fully step into your yes-filled life. Say no to the good so you can say yes to the great. Join me on this journey to discover your yes-filled life. Whether you're looking to break free from the golden handcuffs, start a new business, find your dream job, or simply live with more intention and mindfulness, I've got you covered. Let's explore the possibilities together and make your dreams a reality. Ready? Let's do this. Let's get you to your yes-filled life. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Your Yes-Filled Life. I'm your host, Brenda Winkle, and today on the podcast, we have my friend, Joy Graysen. You are in for such a treat. I'll tell you more about Joy in just a second, but a little teaser, she is a Grammy-level vocal performance coach, and she has got something for you no matter what field you are in to elevate and amplify getting your voice heard and your message out there. I cannot wait for you to meet her. I also want to tell you about something really special coming up. In my work with high performers, I'm learning that high performers sometimes try to outthink their own intuition. Does that sound like you? So, one of the things that can happen is if you are a very high performer, you are accustomed to using your intellect. And occasionally that intellect tries to override your intuition. And you know what separates the visionary leaders in our world from the really great leaders? Intuition. That's why I decided to host a masterclass just for you called Unlock Intuition, Discern Intellect from Intuition. We'll be diving into the differences between instinct and intuition, how to recognize the difference between your intellect, your intelligence, and intuitive knowing. And we'll be talking about how to lead and live from a place of full embodied trust in your inner knowing. You'll also experience transformational breathwork to connect you to your most aligned self by releasing stress and anxiety from the body. Now, this free masterclass is going to be held on January 30th from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pacific time. And you can register by going to brendawinkle.com/unlock intuition, all lowercase, all one word. And I cannot wait to see you there. One of my clients has recently realized that as she has tapped into her intuition, her business is skyrocketing. She has a laser focus in what's important, and it is so exciting to see her grow and evolve as she really, really catapults into this next phase of her business. She already is a six-figure business owner and she's headed to seven figures. I mean, it's just a done deal. And as she leans more into this intuition, it's unlocking even more success for her. So I hope that you come join this masterclass, meet some other high performing women. And guess what? If you're listening, you count as a high performing woman. Do you know why? Because that's the kind of people that I attract. Not everybody that I work with recognizes themselves as a high performer, but I promise you, you are. So go get signed up for that class, brendawinkle.com/unlock intuition. And again, that's all lowercase, all one word. I'll include the link in the show notes. Now let's get ready to meet Joy Graysen. Joy Graysen is a seasoned confidence, and performance coach. She has devoted over 3 decades to empowering performers and creators. With her transformative performance mastery method, she propels artists from the sidelines to the forefront of their true purpose, igniting a life they once dreamt of as children. Joy guides artists into, quote, the zone and imparts the wisdom to remain there, not in years, but in mere weeks. Through her holistic approach encompassing targeted mindset work, metaphysical awareness training, spiritual empowerment, technical training, and beyond, Joy unveils the individual superpowers within each artist. Embrace your authentic voice and build your big dream, and believe in the magic of your own creation with Joy's loving and spiritual performance mastery program, crafted specifically for those longing to fully engage and manifest their true purpose. Now, I had the distinct pleasure of going behind the scenes and teaching breath work inside one of Joy's programs. And let me tell you, working with her and with her people was an incredible experience. She has so much to offer. I know you're going to love this episode. Introducing the incredible Joy Graysen. Hi, Joy.
Hi, Brenda.
I'm so excited to have you here.
I'm grateful and honored to be here with you. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. The feeling is mutual. Now, I know a little bit about the work that you do, and I cannot wait for our listeners to get to know you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do?
Yeah, for sure. So I work with singers and artists, really of all kinds. I work with writers, actors, even coaches. I have a lot of coach clients, anyone that considers themselves a creator. And my specialty is teaching people how to open their hearts and let the truth of themselves come through, their authentic superpowers without fear. So what makes me different than other coaches, especially in the music space, is that I believe, because I've had 30 years of experience doing this, that fear is not an inevitable part of the equation and can be deconstructed. So you don't have to push through and force through your nerves when you get on stage or when you go in front of the camera, in front of the mic, but that you can just arrive at that point in your full shine and just really come from the truth of yourself, so that your authenticity, your spiritual fingerprint comes through your work, and you don't have to fight through the nerves and the self-consciousness that sets in the minute we get in front of other people, or
Oh,
even
that's
the
so
idea of
juicy.
other people. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was a choir director for 26 years, and there are absolutely people who feel a tremendous amount of fear standing in front of an audience of any size, whether it's an audience of one or an Instagram or Facebook Live, or
Right.
actually performing or speaking in front of people. What do you feel like is one of the most common ways that fear manifests for someone?
It shuts down the flow state.
Mhm.
So you may not even identify it as fear. It can just be you've been practicing forever. You know your song or your speech backwards and forwards. You know how to hit every note. You know every word, and then you get in front of other people and you just lose it.
Mm,
You get in your head and you go blank,
mhm.
or you start to be filled with doubts, like, am I going to get through this? Am I going to make a fool of myself? What is the audience thinking of me? You're basically observing yourself from an imaginary lens, and it throws you out of what I refer to as the quantum field. You're out of your flow state and you're operating in a very mechanical way. So your magic kind of goes out the window.
Absolutely. That's the artistry piece, right? Is that
Yeah,
magic, that flow state. Because when you're a creative, whether that's an artist, a writer, a singer, a performer, or a coach, that flow state, the access to the creativity, that's where the magic is.
absolutely.
And so if someone is cutting off their own magic, with their fear, what's usually the first thing you ask them to do to sort of shift that?
Um, it's in the preliminary work. First of all, breathing is always the best go-to re-presencer, if you will. Like it just kind of puts you back into that present moment, because what happens is we go outside of the moment and we go into what's going to happen when I get to that note, or what is the audience thinking about me, or what will they think if I mess up. So you're already leaving the present moment and going into the future. So we take a few deep breaths, we ground ourselves when we get on stage or in front of the mic, or click, the camera button on your phone, whatever. And then it's a matter of focus, where you focus your attention,
Mhm.
right? So when you're in a fear state, in this sense, you're not actually focusing outwards from self. Your viewpoint shifts from, like, almost like you go outside of your own head into the audience, and you look back at yourself from their imaginary points of view. So you're
Mm.
already disembodied,
Mhm.
right?
Absolutely.
So I teach people um, how to stay grounded in what they're saying, who they're speaking to, and why. What are you hoping to achieve by saying this in the first place?
Mhm.
And one of my little secrets is, one of my big secrets is, no matter how many people are out there, you find a prototype or an avatar in your mind of someone that puts you in a state of flow. So it could be your best friend, it could be your dog, it could be your grandmother, it could be your husband or wife or what have you, so that you imagine that you're speaking to the person that you need to speak to, and then everyone in the audience becomes that person. And so you don't trip the wire of in quantum physics, they discovered that as soon as, even down to a subatomic particle, as soon as an electron or a proton recognizes that it's being observed, it stops operating in the quantum flow
Mhm.
state, and it goes
Mhm.
back to being like a particle, like an
Mhm.
animal playing dead. No one here, just us mechanical marbles, right? So when you remove the element of observation, perceived observation, from your own mind, whether consciously or subconsciously, and you put yourself into a state of privacy, you put yourself back into the position to be operating in wave function and allowing that quantum magic, that flow state, to connect you to the land of infinite potential, to this great pool of everything being possible, which is what exists in the quantum field.
I love this. I love this. And so what you're talking about is like that self to self connection. So for the person that they get resourced, or if you're one of these people, you resource yourself self to self, then this is so magical because you're changing the perspective. And to your point about quantum physics, when we study electrons and neutrons, we know that energy goes, or excuse me, energy flows where attention goes because of that observation. And so I love that you're changing the focus. So you're taking the focus, instead of a distortion where I'm looking at myself through my own distorted lens as an audience member. I'm looking at myself as though I'm communicating to somebody, one person. it
Yeah.
it shifts that. That's beautiful.
It just puts you into a state of relaxation. It puts
Hmm.
you back into the truth of yourself, because then you're operating from self, in the state like we were when we were children, when we're not self-reflecting, we're not worrying about social norms, or what's acceptable, what's not.
Hmm.
Yeah, I often use this reference of, like, a baby would never take its first step if it was wondering how its butt looked in the diaper from behind. Like, my butt look fat. Like, the baby is just going to get up and fall down as many times as it is necessary, because every fall is a new lesson in balance. So if you fall down enough times, when you finally take that first step in balance,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, okay, my brain knows exactly what that means now. But if every single fall was like, oh my God, did someone see me make a mistake? You never take a single step to learn those lessons. And so I see this with artists of every stripe. Like, they're so afraid to be imperfect, and they
Mm.
expect so much from themselves in the process of learning how to open and access this quantum portal, that they never get to that point where they're just shining like the sun, and they're just, the sun doesn't alter its state based on what the other planets are doing. It's not like, Jupiter, sorry, you don't get any light today. It just shines, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like, yet what we do as humans in our human brain is we close if we think something's dangerous, or someone's going to judge us, or we're going to get kicked out of the tribe. It's a primitive instinct that gets triggered. And so we're like, oh, I better pull in my shine just so I don't mess up
Mm-hmm.
and
And
someone will think badly.
that's also a trauma response. So
Yes.
if you've experienced trauma in your life, this can be a way that it feels inaccessible. You might have a full body experience around this. And if that's you, there could be some trauma to unpack.
And who doesn't have
Well,
that?
yeah. I mean, by the
Exactly.
definition, my definition of trauma is too much, too fast, in a way that exceeds our capacity to cope. And so by that definition, we've all experienced trauma. Yeah.
100%. I love that definition. That's fantastic. But it's true. It's true. And so we have all of these emotional scars from those traumas that signal us to pull it in, close it down, close your heart space.
Mm-hmm.
And I am I'm kind of different from a lot of other coaches in the sense that I am an intuitive learner, and I'm an intuitive singer. I'm an intuitive writer. I'm an intuitive in everything I do. So most of what I know, I received and I downloaded from my own experience and my own fascination with understanding how things work. And
Mm-hmm.
at a point in my life, about 11, 12 years ago now, I had these 4 traumas that happened all at the same time. And I knew this was a really make break point in my life. I was either going to really atrophy. I remember I was sitting in the bathtub and I could barely straighten my spine or stretch out my legs. And I was like, you got to get moving in some way, or this is going to be the point where everything starts to dwindle. And I remember thinking, I'll just get my lymph system flowing. And so I took to walking, and I wound up in the woods, and I started this practice of writing on my little iPhone 5S. And I started writing. I'd find these hidden trails, and I would just sit in presence with nature and start receiving. I just started observing actually all the patterns and all of the behavior of the life around me and the nature around me. And I started to see patterns, and I started to observe many things. At first, like none of the I was like, there's a million eyeballs on me at any given moment, but I can't see any of them because they're all hiding from me. As I progressed through this practice over 3 years, all the animals started coming out and communing with me and crawling on me. And but what I noticed, the biggest thing, the biggest breakthrough, was I noticed that everything was in surrender to the sun.
Mm-hmm.
And everything was arms wide open. All the plants, all the leaves, everything was just like not defending itself in any way, and just open to receive in a state of surrender. And I started thinking about that, and the analogy of what I do as an artist and how many of my clients I would observe doing the opposite,
Right.
closing their hearts
Right.
and hold. Yeah.
And so there's this comparison thing that happens for people. But you're to your point, we don't see that in nature. We don't see the redwood saying, "Gosh, I wish I was shorter like a spruce." We
Right.
just don't see that in nature. There's no question about
Right.
just be as big and grand as you want or as small
Right.
as you want, but just allowing yourself to be whatever you truly are.
Right. And just and doing the doing of that and being the being of that, and then just allowing yourself to receive whatever you need.
Mhm.
It's just it's right there, and it's the sun and it's the water and the soil and whatever other life forms. And so I I made a comparison of when the artists are shutting down and not open, they're not behaving like the sun.
Mhm.
They're pulling in their shine and they're reactively altering their behavior in a defensive mechanism.
Mhm.
And I thought if we could be like the sun and shine from the center of ourselves, like children do when they're not self reflecting, then we open the light that brings everything to life. And so I started to think, well, isn't that the ultimate definition of love, of unconditional love? It's just the expansion outwards and willingness to open without hesitation.
Mhm.
So all of a sudden I started to realize, like, oh my God, that's the new definition of love that I'm going to start operating from. And the opposite was, well, if this is love, then this closing is fear,
Mhm.
and fear of survival, right? And so from that moment, this continuum of love on one side, fear on the other became the backbone of what I discovered and what I teach, which is when you're opening and receiving and giving, you're opening this portal at your heart center, the biggest electromagnetic field in the human body. And you are giving yourself access to your flow state, to the quantum possibilities within you, whether you're a singer or a mother or whatever. I think everyone's an artist in some way. And when you're reacting and you're closing because you feel it's dangerous to be vulnerable or emotionally open because of trauma, then you're not only um, cutting your reach out into the world, but you're you're giving yourself less and less access to your magic.
Mhm. So for the person who's listening and they're thinking, okay, I don't know about the quantum field that you're talking about. I don't know that I believe that the heart's the largest electromagnetic field in the body, which by the way, it is. Go to Institute of Heart Math for tons and tons and tons of scientific research around that. But for the person who's thinking, I need something really tangible. What would you say to that person who's stuck in fear? Maybe their like shoulders are hunched in, they're nervous, there's a lump in their throat. How does that, if you were to give it really tactical advice to that person, what would it sound like?
Okay, so if I were talking to a singer, because that's a very easy um, metaphor for other things, and also that's what I specialize in, I would say when you're about to perform and you're standing in front of a group, you're putting yourself in a mental space of, I am about to expose myself to a bunch of strangers who I'm unfamiliar with for the most part. And I'm going to do something that's going to require me to bring my skill set, and I may make a mistake and they may not like it, right? So you're putting yourself in a framework of this good or bad, this binary, like I'm either going to fail or I'm going to succeed. I'm
Mhm.
being judged and I better show up. You're putting yourself in a mindset that puts you in a mechanical state of this is what I have to produce or else, right?
Mhm.
And I call that room A.
Mhm.
So when you're watching yourself and you're like, okay, I have to perform, I have to function. And of course, that's when you're least able to because you're putting yourself under that kind of pressure. So what I teach people how to do is go into a completely different perspective of that scenario, right? Like we're dropping a snow globe down into that, and I'm saying, you're not in front of a group of strangers. You're not in front of people who are expecting anything of you, and you don't have to do anything if you have this other perspective, which is room B, which is I'm simply having a private conversation with one other person. And in this little snow globe, all I have to know is, what am I saying? Who am I talking to that puts me in that snow globe, puts me in a state of privacy where I'm not being observed, but I'm just having a conversation, a private conversation. And what do I want from them? So let's say I'm singing the song, I Want to Hold Your Hand by the Beatles. First, I say, it's not even a song. I'm not singing a song. There's no notes, there's no lyrics. I just remove the room A perspective from it. And I put myself into the mindset, I'm just having a private conversation with one other person. And what I'm saying is, I am so crazy about you. And as much as it's scary to tell you this, I have to tell you. And I want you to not reject me. I want you to just touch my hand. Just touch my hand. Right? So I put myself into what's the context that's going to make this personally real for me. So it's no longer a song and a performance and a presentation in front of in public. It's a private conversation where I have a human, me personally, Joy, have a human desire and a need to say something to someone very specific. So then I would think of, who do I most want to say this to right now in present time? Like, oh my God, if I could talk to my favorite musical icon, Sting, for example, who I saw recently in the front row in Vegas. If I could just say to him, I want to hold your hand. Like, I just want to touch your hand. I want to feel, right? Then suddenly I'm no longer thinking about the audience. I'm no longer thinking about I have to hit notes. I'm now just having a private conversation with Sting, and I'm hoping that he'll say yes. So then I'll have them deliver the lyric as a
That is
spoken.
so good. So good. And so when I was teaching choirs, especially with kids, I would tell them something similar, a little different, but similar. And I always equated it to everyone likes presents, like gifts. Yeah. What you're doing is a gift. And
Yes.
reframing this from pressure of being judged into you're giving a gift was helpful for those kids.
I
So
love that.
you have a special free gift for our listeners on some ways that they can really tap into their inner artist. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, I have. It's I call it a mini course because it's not a huge time commitment, and it's a digital, just bunch of videos that I put together explaining these principles of how to raise your frequency as an artist, how to step into this more fearless approach to communication in general, but especially as an artist, as a performer, as a creative. And I kind of walk you through how this works, and I give you some exercises that you can apply to this, so
Beautiful.
that you can start to feel what this feels like, because it really is a game changer, because you're not now like an insect on a microscope slide. You're literally now engaged in a process of communication. And we can think with that, that's familiar. And when you then, after you take the melody away and you speak it first as a monologue, and then you kind of get this flow going where you're talking to that person, you visualize this person, and then you add the melody back in, but you still stay in the conversation. The notes are so much easier to hit. And
Absolutely.
everything just shows up the way you hope it will, because you're not watching yourself, you're talking to someone instead.
Oh, I love
So
that. So I'm going to link that in the show notes. It's a fairly long URL, so we're not going to read it to you, but please go to the show notes and click that link so that you can grab that free mini course to raise your vibration as an artist. You're going to love it. Joy, as we kind of wrap things up, I have a question for you. Is there something you did or did not do that got you to your yes filled life?
I always followed my heart and my intuition from the time I
Mm,
was a baby. I came out of the womb singing and I never stopped. I sang before I could talk. And I think that following your heart and what you love and what brings you joy is always going to lead you in the right direction, even if it's scary,
mhm,
even if it means going against the grain sometimes, because it's really your heart is your gauge of what your path is supposed to be. And when you follow that, you're going to have a yes filled life. The universe is going to say yes to you. And you're going to maybe break through some static and some other things in the world, but we need to break through. We need to break down the old in order to
mhm.
create the new. So I would say following my heart was the magic key, and I think that is the key.
Oh, it's so good. Joy, thank you so much for being a part of your yes filled year.
I am so happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you to everyone who took the time to watch and listen.
Yes, yes, thank you, listeners.
Isn't Joy incredible? I knew you were going to love this episode. In fact, invitation right now, take a screenshot of where you're listening to this podcast and post it on social media. Tag Joy and I and put us in your stories and I promise you both Joy and I are going to respond to you. So she's on Instagram at Free Your Voice with Joy and I'm on Instagram at Brenda Winkle. Cannot wait to connect with you there. So, here are the takeaways. Number 1, heart wide open. Joy has this incredible insight that fear doesn't need to be your sidekick in the creative journey. You can picture yourself stepping out onto a stage or in front of a camera, minus that familiar nervous churn. That's the kind of liberation that she guides her clients toward. Number 2, when the flow gets flustered. You know that moment when you've rehearsed everything to a T, but you seize up under the spotlight? Joy said sheds light on how that fear can hijack your flow state, causing you to lose your grip on your creative work. And of course, we talked about the antidote in number 3, breath and focus, the antidote to your fear. It's beautifully straightforward, deep, intentional breathing and honing in on your core message and the people you're really reaching out to. Take yourself out of the past or the future, put yourself right into the present. And that leads us to number 4, the quantum connection. Joy lets us in on her strategy for keeping it real. Picture talking to someone who's naturally drawing out your brilliance and let that bond energize your performance. Number 5, celebrating the stumbles. Just like a toddler taking their first steps, Joy champions the idea of seeing each tumble as a learning curve, not a cue for criticism. Invitation to recognize and release any thoughts of perfectionism or worrying about what people think. That is not how you learn to do your best work. Remember how Joy talked about how the baby isn't worried about how their butt looks in the diaper when they're learning to walk? The same is true for each of us. We don't need to worry. Number 6, wisdom from the wild. Joy talks about how she draws inspiration from nature and noting how plants don't shy away from the sun's rays, much like how we should and could radiate confidently without self guarding. And remember me talking to you that even the biggest, tallest redwood is not apologizing for its bigness, and neither should you. Number 7, the love fear spectrum. Central to Joy's teaching in this beautiful notion that love is about growing and opening up, while fear makes us shrink and disconnect from our inner wonders. So, invitation to open that big, beautiful heart. Now, you can connect with Joy. She is on Instagram at Free Your Voice with Joy, like we talked about. Her website is joygraysen.com. That's JoyGraysen.com. And she has a free gift for you. Raise your frequency as an artist. And I have the URL in the show notes. It's a fairly long URL, so go click it there. And then Joy has a free masterclass coming up at the end of January called Learn the Sequence of a Grammy Level Performance in this free masterclass. And you can go check that out, clicking the link in the show notes or going directly to the grammydream.joyvocalcoaching.com. And Joy and I are in some groups together. I've seen her work. I've seen people after they have worked with her. And I really encourage you to go take a look. She is really so good at what she does. Also, remember the free masterclass that I'm hosting on January 30th. Unlock intuition, discerning intellect from your intuition. And you could register by going to brendawinkle.com/unlock intuition. My signature program, Yes Academy, is now enrolling. Yes Academy is a 12-month mastermind healing program and soon to be leadership certification program for world changers with a big mission on their heart. For more information, go to brendawinkle.com/Yes Academy. Thank you so much for listening today. If you loved this episode, would you please give the episode a rating or a review? It is literally the most helpful thing that you can do for the podcast. And once again, Joy and I welcome you to take a picture of this and tag us both on Instagram. Let us know what your favorite part was, and let us know if there are still challenges that you're facing when it comes to getting your voice out in the world. And we will answer you, I promise. Thank you so much for listening. If you love this episode, would you please give it a rating or a review? And also share it with someone you care about. Thank you so much for listening. Bye for now. Until next time.